So today I'll show you how I built this wooden shelf, which is perfect for a craft room or anywhere you need to organize plastic cases. So my wife has a craft room and she recently got into using a Cricut, and that requires a lot of vinyl sheets, and she was using plastic cases like this just stacked up, and she said, hey, is there a way you can build me a shelf? And just a week before I built this shelf, I built these, which are shelves for my screws, and it's exactly the same shelf the way I constructed it. These use little Tupperware containers and they keep all my screws in them, and I keep them under my workbench. So when she asked me to build this shelf, I did the same thing. And I used wood that I had lying around my shop. So this was hardwood and plywood. I used the same plywood for the top, which is a thin 3/8 inch plywood. I used that for the top, the bottom, and the back. On the sides, I have a lot of melamine lying around. Melamine like this, which is kind of like a particle board. I use it for my workbench and things like that. And so this is what I used for the sides. So there's no fancy joints. I didn't use any rabbets or dados or anything like that. They're just butt joints that I glued together. I have a glue bottle, and I just glued the edges together, used my nail gun, and I nailed them in place, and it's perfectly fine for what this is used for. This doesn't have to be an incredibly sturdy box. It's just going under a craft work table. The only thing that's slightly tricky about it is the mounting of these shelves. So in here, I have these shelf boards, which are, you can get a 4x8 sheet of this for about $12. So it's a hardboard. Again, it's kind of like a particle board. It's pretty rigid. It does bend a little, but it's pretty rigid and hard, and it has a smooth surface on one side and kind of a brown surface on the other. And these fit into slots, which I cut in this side melamine, and I did it using my radial arm saw. So this is the radial arm saw that I use to cut the slots in that board. Now you might not have a radial arm saw. You might have a small circular saw like this. This can work too. What you have to do is loosen the adjustment on one side, and you can see that you can adjust the depth of the blade. So what you would want to do is come down here and set the depth to 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch, and then you lock it. And when you make your cuts, you'll have a straight edge that you will follow on one side. So you'll mark your board where you want to make all your cuts, and you will just follow that straight edge, and it will cut your board with those little slots cut into it, not all the way through. Now if you do have a radial arm saw or a table saw, that works as well. You set the same thing, you set the blade halfway and you make your cut. But a radial arm saw is perfect for cuts like this. Now one thing to note is the saw blade you're using, like the saw blade I have, is thinner than the boards I'm sliding in here. So I would not be able to slide the board in here. So I would have to make 2 cuts. I would make one cut and then inch the board over a little bit and make the next cut so it's thick enough to slide that board in. But that is the method that I use to make the only slightly complicated cuts in the case. The dimensions of this case are based on the dimensions of these plastic bins. So if these are 14-inch wide and 14-inch deep, you make the case 14 3/4, so you have a little play on either side. And if this is 3 inches high, you make it 3 1/2. That's how big the compartment is. So you just go along and measure, okay, 3 1/2, cut the slot, 3 1/2, cut the slot, and you just work your way up. Then you have to determine how high is the table that you're going to put this under. Ours was 29 1/2 inches, so that meant I could get 7 compartments and still fit under there. The boards on the side are 3/4 inch. These are 3/8 inch on the top. The top and the bottom and the back just give it the structure, hold the thing together, rigidity. These boards on the side are what's actually taking the weight. This thing is actually quite heavy. It's not very light, but that mostly is from the heavy boards on the side. Had I used a lightweight plywood or a hardboard, it would be lighter. but the structure and the strength and the weight and the support is on these sideboards. These sheets in the middle, like I said, they're pretty flexible. They're not going to hold a lot of weight, but they don't have to. These, we're just putting lightweight little vinyl sheets in here, so these don't have to be very heavy. But again, they just slide in and are flush with the front, and the cases slide in right on top of them. So this is a really easy thing to build. It doesn't take very long. The hard part is planning everything out. You have to make a sheet where you measure everything. You say, okay, here's my dimensions, here's my cut list, here's where I'm going to cut all the slots. The figuring out what you're going to do probably takes longer than actually building it. So I hope you like the design. I'd like to hear what you guys use, so let me know what you think. Thanks. Well, I hope you liked the video you just watched. If you did, feel free to subscribe by clicking the button on this side. You can also check out all the videos I've done, the playlist from things I've built, things I've fixed, home repair, 3D printing, and on this side you can check out a recommended video similar to the one you just watched. And as always, down in the description I'll put a link to my blog, which has more pictures and more information about the video you just watched. Thanks.